Up next is our very last speaker, Nick Romano. He's gonna take some time to like set up, but he'll be doing techno-juggling. So using camera tracking of colored balls, he'll live code by juggling.
So this is, I would call it techno-juggling. And it's sort of an integration between the practice of juggling and technology, of course. So I have this is a kind of juggling table within juggling. There's sort of like angled table juggling is a sort of subset, and I sort of explored that in this project. But I'll have to walk you guys through. I see this as sort of like a game, interactive media, and that's what I come from. My background, I have come from a media studies degree. I just recently graduated from the New School. And this was a project I did for my thesis capstone. So you can see the start screen is, it has a calibration and start mode. So walk you through the calibration. So let me get this one. And you start, it's tricky, but all right, so you can see the view of the table, and these are the balls in my hand and everything. So we have a top-mounted camera that's facing down onto the table, and it's kind of like makeshift wired fashion, this polarizing lens. And I'll try to give you some ability to so yeah, you can see this kind of effect going, infinite mirrors. So I sort of took this as a design challenge to look at, we have interactive media, we have VR, but we sort of haven't explored this sort of space where we have a ground floor of visuals in which we can play games with, physical objects. But the problem is when you face a camera, of course, you're seeing itself. So here with the polarizing camera, you're able to filter out what's coming from a TV. So it's a little trick. And as you'll see more in the presentation, tricks is all a part of a juggler's practice. So yeah, just have to rotate this. And yeah, there you have it. Just, it's blank canvas now. So the calibration, you actually have to just do simple color tracking through OpenCV for each ball. Yeah, just to give you some reassurance, I just clicked the yellow color on the ball, and you can see this kind of white line forming, showing the trail of the ball. And I'll do the same for the other three. And from there, you launch the application. Yeah, so yeah, you just got to get set up first. But so pretty much, I was interested in kind of like genealogies of technology. So trying to look at a piece of technology historically and kind of follow it through time. So juggling actually has a pretty interesting backstory, and in the yeah, get some of these going. You can see some of these figures are moving. But this guy right here, his name's Adam Powers, and he was presented to the world in 1982. by a company called Triple I, which is Information International Inc., which was one of the first computer graphics in film companies. And they actually worked, they were the company that helped make the motion graphics for Tron, the movie that came out after that year. And so I was finding, this was kind of my like first source to find like, hey, why are people using juggling as a way to demonstrate technology? You know, that's kind of an interesting thing. Especially, Tron was like funded by Disney, and they had a video game series that came after that in the same year. So, you know, why is there this confidence in digital media through juggling to convey that, you know, some new set of computer graphics technology to the world? And here's like you can kind of see they've got this sort of abstract space where Adam Powers is juggling these, you know, 3D solid objects. And that was something I sort of wanted to emulate in my own program here. So I have a live coding interface that, you know, goes with this, and I've hooked it up to some knobs. So this first knob right here is the scaling for the size of the shapes that you want to play with. So I have the yellow ball here. I can throw it. I can shrink it down. Ooh, here's yellow. You can see a little smaller. So yeah, I just wanted to be able to play with video and you know, digital media, video, GIFs, images in a tactile way, which is often neglected from the, you know, the common experience with laptops and computers. Moving on. This is another guy, and you have to wait a little bit for the captions, but here's actually, so everyone knows Pixar, and here we got some other guys in there. Some people who might be familiar with computer graphics history, like Ed Catmull, he's the person who founded Pixar, and he was working in the primary like stages of computer graphics at University of Utah. And him and his colleague, like Fred Park, they did some interesting things. You know, the first computer graphic hand through digitization, and as well as the first face with, you know, being able to smile and make these creepy, weird gestures. But yeah, interestingly, like later on in the late '80s, they made Pixar's second animation was called Red's Dream. And you can kind of think of it as a precursor to Toy Story thematically, because in a moment here, you'll see the unicycle separates from the clown and starts juggling itself. And the plot of this is just that there's this bicycle store, and when it closes, the unicycle comes to life and it starts juggling. So again, Pixar, you know, the most probably well-known animation company. Why are they trying to prove out their computer graphics architecture using juggling? That's a question that I wrestled with throughout this research. All right, now we have right here. I'll make him a little bigger. This is called the Amiga juggler, and this was made in like, you know, the same time period, '86, and it's kind of this spherical guy who's just doing a shower juggling pattern, and this is made on the Commodore Amiga platform, which is one of the first like multimedia computers that's, you know, being brought to the mainstream, and this guy, Eric Graham, he's like an ex-astronomer, and he brings all of that knowledge with him to start like, you know, doing some early like home, you know, individualized creation of computer graphics, rather than seeing it in the hands of like a big industry like film and CGI. You see this kind of individual contributor who's Eric. He not only made this animation, but he also the library that he created, he made it open source and made it available to any other developers on the Amiga platform via floppy disk at the time. So he would actually like mail them to people so they could get started. And many people use that to generate more animations and get started with it. And you can see the importance within culture is also, get this guy. This was like the Amiga World magazine from that same year, and it features this guy with early ray tracing on the cover, and he's kind of like a first artificial robotic juggler. And also important to mention here, this is part of a music video from Tom Petty in the called Jammin' Me, and they very briefly just feature it, and as well as this Marble Run game. So again, we're circling back here, but I saw that the technology is sort of moving from the hands of like major film and industry and going into communities, Amiga community, and we see that jugglers, they have their own community as well. Juggling has been going on for a long time, but there's a lot of commonalities between people who like juggling and people who like technology. And the pathways of interest they stem from computer graphics, but they also went into machines and robotics. But yeah, here's some other animations made. You can let me find this one here. This one is basically an early form of like juggling recursion, where you see a juggling machine that starts juggling other juggling machines that continues in an infinite loop there. So that's one kind of contribution that juggling sort of included in their style. But here's where we get into more so robots and like feedback. And this was super surprising to me, was that Claude Shannon, he was not only a revolutionary engineer and contributor to like information theory, he was also a juggler, and he made juggling machines. And this is his W.C. Fields, which he decorated in a kind of costume for a puppet. But you can see it's juggling on this drum. It's doing bounce juggling patterns. I'm trying to make sure it's visible to you guys too. Yeah, you see it's doing some bounce juggling. And I found it interesting that Claude Shannon, he was sort of motivated to create these creatures because he himself, W.C. Fields is like a person who was in vaudeville shows and did juggling acts and comedy routines. And so Claude Shannon sees his own contributions to like digital communications as being something that negates vaudeville, because we are able to call each other. We're not attending these performances. So he wanted to create the namesake to sort of like benefit to that community. And I also found it interesting that there's this sort of like feedback relationship between building robots that juggle. And I found a cool early illustration of that. You can see this robot guy whose partner juggling. It says talk about feedback, but feedback is like a really crucial aspect of digital communications, and especially in designing something like this, I had to follow that sort of train of thought of being the human and trying to work with an inanimate object and try to form this kind of collaborative relationship where I could take my juggling practice and bring it into this world. As well as in surface juggling was the place I looked, and Stephen Meshke is like a more modern example of someone who makes these robotic automatons that can juggle. This is just doing a simple 3-ball cascade, but I really thought that the ability to juggle in a plane is one of the barriers that prevents most people from learning it, because you start juggling in this plane and then you start dropping the balls, they roll everywhere. So you don't get that ability to do quick feedback, and that's what juggling really is. It's like you try a pattern, your form of feedback is that they all fall across the floor, and you have to keep iterating yourself until you kind of find those motor pathways that you can do the performance. So yeah, what we got here is some other examples of surface juggling, which I found to, we have billiard juggling, which is against, just using a common pool table. This is like the first video of inclined plane juggling I could find, where he's like rolling these bean bags on a surface. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was all of the ones for that section. All right, and I gotta scale this one down. Oh man, there's this one. Oh, there we go. I also kind of map these in a strange way, so I have to kind of figure it out on the spot. But I found, like, looking into this research of juggling and technology, that, moving from the 80s to the 90s and then into the 2000s, we have like softwares like Max MSP, which introduced computer vision and tracking. So that period of time was also very fruitful for jugglers, and people started writing like academic theses on the subject. This one comes from Arthur Wagner, who says, like, electronic music is in a strong need of new instruments that are more than just practical tools or flashy gadgets. In this thesis, I claim that juggling is a very interesting and highly potential candidate for the task. So reading this, I was like super inspired, of course, and I wanted to try that out for myself. And they also explored some other interesting avenues, like how do you make games with juggling? So they converted the Space Invaders game to use juggling balls as your weapon, and you're able to throw them at these alien targets. Yeah, there we go. And here was like a video of Arthur Wagner. I don't think I have sound going right now. But he was kind of a person who was theorizing how do you use juggling balls to enact sound, and that's a lot about what creating music from some type of movement or creating art from some type of time-based motion is a really like kind of cool phenomenon to look into and try out. And so I'll kind of like move into a more performative frame. Let me grab two. And bear with, there's a little bit of lag with the rendering of some of these. Oh, I was almost there. Of course, this is, it's like a work in progress. Let me get to it. Yeah, here's a cool one that I like to play with in terms of juggling. This is a type of like visual aesthetic where you can take the distance between balls. So that, man, these together. All right, so you can see, in this case, the distance between balls is representing the diameter of circles. And you also can use additive color spaces to take the overlapping regions of these circles to make those, from the red, blue, and green, you can create those additive color spaces. So I'll just do a little bit of juggling with that so you can see this cool effect in action. So yeah, that's just a little bit of that. And this effect was introduced by someone named Andrew Olson, and they're like an active contributor to a community. They post a lot of videos on YouTube of them juggling, and they see themselves as like an artist juggler who tries to merge those two realms. And he's not someone who I talked to personally, but I was inspired by But I also, like, through this research, I did some interview work. One person was named Jack Boyce. And the interesting story about him is, like, he was someone who was a part of that early juggling community in the 90s, who had seen, like, the Amiga, who had seen Atom Powers, as we talked about before. And he was a math guy, so he found himself at, like, Caltech, and he found himself around some like-minded individuals, and they were like math and physics guys who sort of tried to take their knowledge of juggling and math and combine them. And they actually, around this time, there was this language developing in juggling called siteswap. And siteswap is like a numeric pattern language. Let's find. I'll let this load. I know I'm having some. Oh, here's. I think the problem with this interface is a little bit of like unpredictability. But this is like a barcode. You can see the GitHub repository if you want to scan. I know it's like enclosed in a circle, so it might not work right now. But anyway, going ahead with siteswap, sort of like siteswap is a set of numbers that describes the pattern of a juggling. So the very simplest one is called 3. The 3-ball cascade. So that just means that every single time when your left and right hands are switching, you're throwing it at a height of 3. But then there can be more complicated patterns. And the first one that was established that was a new pattern that was as a result of this kind of interaction between humans and computers was called 441. And I'll see if I can, maybe we'll just juggle with these guys that are here. Yes, sorry, I got some of these barcodes, like, yeah, let's make it smaller. I'm not sure what happened with the barcode there. Let's leave it. So yeah, in that case, you have a 4, and then 1 is when you throw a cross from one hand to the other, and then 4, 4, 1. But believe it or not, that pattern, no one knew about it until they created these things called siteswap animators, which was sort of like a computer program that was able to take these sequences and animate it. And that was really important in the pre-digital like video communication, because you can see in these early web forums, like they had rec.juggling, which was like a Usenet platform where they tried to communicate patterns to each other over the web, but they don't have video, so that's the problem. How do you communicate juggling patterns without actually being able to see them? So they came up with this numerical sequence, and I was able to talk with Jack Boyce just like a few months ago, because he created this animator in the 90s, and strangely, it became popular on Tumblr just in the fall. Some of you might have seen like these stick figure juggling guys passed around on Tumblr or online, YouTube, elsewhere. People started to create like memes with them, and I would love to show you, but I think I've got some issues. But yeah, let me just pull up, I feel like it might be more fruitful to just pull up Juggling Lab. Yeah, so this is what is meant by a siteswap animator. So it's sort of like a program where you can type in these numbers, and people actually took to it to sort of make jokes and memes in that sort of way. Let's try to find some of these. So yeah, you have people, because one of the features that they allow in Juggling Lab is to have like image props as juggling balls instead of the balls. You can see people might put like knives for stabbing. There's quite a lot of kind of danger provoking or violence that is in this archive on Tumblr. Unfortunately, maybe not. And then this one on the left is kind of interesting because it's sort of showing like the one who's left out, the one guy who doesn't have any juggling balls, but there's a whole like ring of people. Some other interesting ones I saw was like juggling, trickle-down economics. People use the system to do like Duck Duck Goose, like they did a rendering of Duck Duck Goose. So yeah, I just found that people using this platform, they exploited the software in ways that were like well beyond juggling. And that was sort of something I wanted to take into the design was, being able to use video images as juggling props is a powerful mode of narrative and communication. And I hope to communicate that to all of you through that historical lens of, showing you Atom Power, showing you Pixar, showing you the Amiga juggler, and it's devolving from realism into the stick figure, which is kind of interesting too. Lastly, I think I'll just end with one other visualization that I haven't been able to show just yet, and I might quit the program and reopen it just because of some issues. Yeah, I think I lost some of the motion tracking. Well, unfortunately, maybe failed experiment, but yeah, I hope that I communicated some of that. Sorry that I wasn't able to show some of the other visualizations, but I have some. If you follow this link, I don't know if it'll be able to scan with the overlappingness. Let's see. Yeah, I've lost a little control of it over there, but yeah, I have some YouTube videos demonstrating some of these effects. Maybe not able to show right now, but yeah, I hope that you found this interesting, and that I see juggling as something that could be well introduced within live coding. Maybe not platform not just ready just yet, but something to continue developing, and hope to see it as something that we can bring into live coding communities.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes.
How would you do this in 3D?
Yeah, 3D is an interesting case. I talked to Alan Knutson over email a little bit about that. And that's sort of what you might have seen in that one that was kind of swaying this way. But I lost the motion tracking. But they describe it as these kind of like space-time braids. So you move through, you use time as the z-axis. And as the ball is moving through time on the platform, its position moving through time is sort of like this. Forms these braids, especially when you're doing patterns like cascade. So they sort of like interweave into each other based on what type of pattern you're performing. If it's a cascade, they're sort of like intersecting in sort of a figure-8 pattern that's being kind of stretched out through time, versus a shower might be more. But also, that's just one possibility. I would, if anyone has other ideas for how to incorporate 3D in this case, would love to hear it. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
I have a question. So you have all these different modalities. So I was wondering, what's the challenge of trying to integrate all these different like pictures and videos while also like juggling at the same time?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, for me, it's sort of trying to form narratives through these multimedia. I attempted to have a structure of like scenes, and that's what I was trying to switch through. But there's, obviously there's some lag when you try to preload media objects from one scene to the next. Trying to bridge the gap between like we consume media, we watch it, we share it, but how do we like very meticulously grab those sources, play with them, form them into narrative structures? That's sort of what the challenge I was trying to go with there.
Thanks. Well, this is to me so like whimsical and delightful and wondrous. I'm curious, could you talk more about like what applications of this technology you would love to see, and like, I don't know, what grounds for conveying meaning? Like, I feel like it's so ripe for so many things. Tell me more.
Yeah, sort of like thinking about juggling as like a sort of gateway, a way to demo certain technology. So I could see like using the table, elevating it to like be a flat surface, maybe doing some sort of like tangrams type of thing where you take shapes and fill them with video objects and form maybe a house or other types of symbols. And also, thinking about types of maybe board games, tactile-based board games like checkers or other things could be fun to play with.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I like how the entire kind of narrative that you're building and the sort of all of the historical context. You've got this sort of, performance form of the juggler, but also you've got the performance of the lecture. How, you've talked about vaudeville a little, but are there ways in which like juggling while speaking, juggling while explaining, juggling while like acting in a certain way, is there like history there that you can draw on?
Well, within the history of like what I was able to research, that was something tried within those early like Max MSP artists. They were driven by narrative storytelling through juggling, and there was one I saw where he placed a brick wall, and then he was kind of like, he had like heads, and he was like hammering the heads at the brick wall. And that's sort of what you're seeing in Juggling Lab, is like ways to create jokes and memes through this platform of stick figure bodies. So yeah, I see like people actively trying to do that. But in reality, the actual like skill of doing so is pretty tough to juggle and speak and manage the microphone and do all these things. So I guess it just takes a lot of iterations, practice, feedback loops in that way.
You briefly showed a recursive setup with the TV. What kinds of things were you exploring more with that kind of recursion? Oh
yeah, I mean, honestly, I was sort of exploitively trying to work with it because I really wanted to be able to use a TV as a surface, and it's in terms of color tracking of balls, you kind of want it to be as simple as possible, unless maybe other people have different motivations for what they're trying to do. But in my case, I wanted it to be as simple as possible to track the balls. And sort of I went to Best Buy with my mom, and then I knew that like the polarization on sunglasses is a way to like tell what's going on. So we went to Best Buy, and then I take my sunglasses and kind of turn them in different ways to see which types of TVs are able to filter out the light. And I was very often greeted by a lot of Best Buy employees being like, "Hey, can I help you? You want to?" But yeah, it was sort of just trying to work with the TV, its properties, and how do I take advantage of that.